Hi, this video we're going to talk about influence and how people are how influence resonates with people on a daily basis. I was thinking to myself how the story of Jesus is such a peculiar one. Jesus performed many feats that are known as miracles because they were so amazing. Feats that would be, if they were performed today by an individual, would still be considered amazing. For example, it's stated in the Bible that Jesus walked on water. A feat still unreplicated to this day. Many attempt to create the appearance of it, the illusion of it. But if we take the Bible at its word, if we take the Bible literally, then no other person has been able to do this. Jesus also is stated as healing the blind, allowing a blind man to see, healing a cripple, a person with leprosy, also bringing back a person from the dead, not just himself, but Lazarus, I believe that person's name was. So Jesus performed many amazing feats, physical feats, that were extraordinary. Not only in our time, because we've been able to at least recreate the appearance of those things, but in those times, that those feats would have been beyond extraordinary. What I was thinking of, if we were holding the Bible as true, is that how strange it would be that there were people who witnessed these things and were yet unconvinced of this. In fact, they felt so threatened by Jesus' talents that they went to the point of killing him. Think about that. Jesus performed acts that were so amazing and that were beneficial to society, yet there were individuals in society who felt so threatened by his works, by his deeds, that they sought to and then had him killed. What I was thinking on was the fact that his works weren't enough to convince people of his claims, to convince people of his assertions. Because I was thinking to myself about how can I go about convincing people that I myself have uncovered the source code to this construct that we call life experience. And I was thinking to myself, if Jesus performed all those feats, things that I know I can't do, and there were still people that were unconvinced as to his assertions, as to his claims, then I don't stand a chance of convincing people, because all I come with are words and facts, logic, and reason. That's all I come with. I can't perform any feats. I can just show people the reason, point to parallels and associations between objects and phenomena that within life experience. Jesus went so far as performing feats. So how can I possibly hope to convince anyone when Jesus went beyond, above and beyond, in trying to demonstrate his claims, and yet he was ultimately rebuked by society, by the powers that be in society at the time. It also made me think to myself, but then Jesus couldn't have did those miraculous feats. Jesus couldn't have done those things at all. And here's what I base that on. The fact that advertisers advertisers today can convince us that McDonald's is a good meal, a good choice of diet. The fact that advertisers can convince us that politicians are trustworthy or likable. The fact that advertisers can convince us that the same type of two shirts that look exactly alike and made of similar material, one is to be valued higher than the other due to one having a certain brand status in contrast to the other. When I think of all the things that advertisers can convince us of on a daily basis, including our own culture, it makes me realize, due to the percentage of people that are influenced and that autonomously function based on the suggestions that advertisers have planted in their minds in commercials and their advertisements, it leads me to the conclusion that Jesus could not have performed his miraculous feats as the Bible states, because being eyewitness to those things would have made him such an overwhelming, he would have convinced people so overwhelmingly. He would have had the majority of the majority of people on his side, as advertisers do with their products, which is why we have market leaders. Jesus would have been a market leader in influence. No other shaman or witch doctor or Pharisee or politician, Roman leader, or any Roman figure of influence in the society could have matched him in actions at the time. So Jesus would have, by default, become the leading public figure of influence, the market leader, if you will, at that time, had he performed those works that the Bible claims that he did. He would have had the majority of the people on his side. The Romans would have sought to use him as a weapon rather than kill him. If he had performed those amazing acts, the Romans would have sought to use him as a weapon. I mean, here's another thing. I even forgot about this one. Jesus escaped from prison. Let's not forget Jesus escaped from prison. When they came to get him in the garden from Judas setting him up, because that's another thing I noticed about the story of Jesus. It plays out just like the crime stories of today, or crime stories that have followed since. You have a guy setting up his good friend, someone that he trusts, and you have Jesus going to jail, and especially for things that he didn't do, by the ruling classes, being branded a criminal by the ruling classes. Notice who gets to brand who the criminal, though they're the one committing the atrocity. Kind of similar to today on many levels. But Jesus didn't go to jail. They didn't come for him in that garden for him escaping when Jesus did escape from a Roman prison. Jesus did escape from a Roman prison. If we remember, the guard was ready to kill himself. Remember, the angel told him not to? What was it, an earthquake or something that opened all the doors? By law, Jesus should have remained in his cell. So that tells you another thing. Jesus did not follow the law. He followed universal law, a divine law, but he didn't follow Roman law. He didn't follow societal law, as you see many of the preachers do today. There's a lot of contrast and distinction between Christians of today and Jesus and his disciples, the original Christians, if you will. They were protesters against the tyranny that was in power. Christians of today are more supporters of it. A lot of preachers are involved in politics, involve themselves voluntarily in politics at that. And let's not forget, they are a tax-free entity for how long now? And let's not forget the church having significant power and being a part of the state throughout history, throughout European history, throughout mainstream history. Religion has had an impact and an influence amongst even Aboriginal people, what are considered Aboriginal people. The religious aspect has always had a significant influence amongst all members of human society. And when you think about as to why is that? Why is that? You have where during the Enlightenment there was a separation of church and science. You had religious being separated from the secular. Now, it was understandable as to why they did that, because clearly religion was having an adverse effect on human progress, on societal progress. That's clear. Today, to this day, it still has a very adverse effect to human society. But back then, it was even much more of an influence. We're talking about medieval, one Roman Catholic Church before pre-Calvinism, pre-Reformist. So we're talking about when the Roman Church, when the Pope, when Catholic Church had just all the power, was the preeminent power, and was pervasive throughout society. Things were not run well. We're talking about times when they were telling you that, in fact, to this day, we still believe that these people deserve some kind of position of power, position of authority, due to what we call providence, divine providence, as if God has sent these people here to rule over the rest of us. Makes no sense whatsoever, because if there's an earthquake, these people are not spared, they die with us. If there's a tornado, if they're in the same location as that tornado, they suffer just like everyone else. So what providence are we talking about here? But let's go back to why people are so enamored with religion. I think there's a very good reason for it. In fact, I think there's a very rational reason for it. Believe it or not. As much as religion has grown to be irrational, hyper, and uberly so, initially religion started out as a rational concept, and to be religious today is still a rational concept. And let me tell you why. It is because we all recognize that there is something deeper going on than the aesthetic life that we see going on around us. We all recognize that there is something innate that is going on around us. Now, when we going back to Enlightenment, when we decided to go the way of science and use that to coordinate human activity and take a major part of become the major influence in society rather than religion itself. That was an illusion. Remember, science comes from religion. Philosophy, they all come from philosophy, really, but science comes from religion. We love to say that philosophy comes out of religion, but to philosophize, to me, is to think. It's to think about deep questions, and religion clearly started off doing that. So religion was philosophizing in the beginning. It just wasn't scientific. Scientific is when we started putting more organized order to it. We started seeking observation and hypothesis and the scientific method by Sir Francis Bacon. Things like that. That's when we, and Rene Descartes. That's when we started separating from religion from science from religion. And what we did with that was we gave the appearance of those two things being demarcated and separate in life. But how can that be when we all exist in one reality? How can that be when we all realize that reality is one thing? That reality is one coherent logic. One giant coherent logic. So how can science and religion exist separately? If anything, the true science and the true religion would be seeking to reconcile the two so that they mirror the actions within society, reality, within actuality. Now, here's another thing that you'll find peculiar. There's a couple of things that you will notice that religious people, when science brings it up, religious people don't get agitated by it. Religious people do not get agitated by this main thing, that life actually works differently than how we see it and experience it. No religious person finds that odd whatsoever. That life actually, when science purports that life fundamentally works differently than how any of us perceive it day to day, no religious person debates this whatsoever. They have no contention to that point whatsoever. Because to them it plays into what they purport, that life is on a deeper level, but then they turn it into a fairy tale story, like a Greek mythology, which is what I think religion today should be called, mythology. Because at the time it was the Greeks' religion. We consider it today as their mythology, and guess what? Because there's no facts, logic, and reason to back up these religions, then they are to be also considered as mythology. Are they not? What I am proposing is that human religion is really human nature. Human religion is reality. That is what all human religion is, regardless of your culture, nation, all those artificial and false things that we use to separate ourselves. Human religion as a species is reality. It is not to be Christian. It is not to be Muslim. It is not to be Buddhist. It is not to be whatever you want to call it. It's actually a combination of the best parts of any religion that has been purported. The best parts of them, as well as the best parts of science, as well as the best parts of philosophy, as well as the best parts of any institutional or idea, concept, conceptualization that we put forth in society should be a part of our daily life. That's how society, that's what should be the fundamental rubric that society is built on. We shouldn't be allowed to, governments shouldn't be allowing businesses to prey and be predators upon their population. That's what Jesus fought against. The fact that it is still going on today, those atrocities and oppressions that were being carried out in the Bible, lends complete credence to religion. And not only that, it says something about human evolution. It says that while our technology, something actually very disturbing, that while our technology has been evolving in weapons and means of control of populations, smartphones and internets and what have you, and light bulbs, what's also been simultaneously going on is a stasis of human mental evolution. It's completely absent. It's non-existent. If we look at what's been going on in the Bible to what's going on to today, it's the same thing still going on. You have Noah, a person who had the foresight to do calculations in his own mind that thought, you know what, it hasn't rained in a long time. We're due for a flood. I better build a boat. Everyone was making fun of him. He turned out to be right. What happens throughout history? The thinker who is outside of the status quo, who's unconventional, always ridiculed in their time, later appreciated because they're the one who had the great idea. Because they're the ones who thought outside the box. But that person is always welcomed during their time with disdain, with being ostracized. Ask Spinoza all about it. Ask the philosopher Spinoza all about it. So we recognize that there's something deep going on, but because religion tells us not to question, each one of our religions tell us not to question, not to think, they give us the impression that they've already got everything figured out, when we know already that no, they don't. We know that they don't have everything figured out. A lot of these religions, when was the last time one of their preachers or one of their protagonists invented something? When was the last time one of them did something useful that benefited the rest of us? You see what I'm saying? Really what they exist as today is more to help you cope. They're control tools. They're control mechanisms. That's all they are. They're control devices for the government, for the state, for the ruling powers. The same powers that Jesus fought against. The very same powers that Jesus fought against are the same powers that if you think about it, the church exists today supporting. All the preachers are doing is coping, helping you cope, helping you deal with your emotions. Science was made to deal with the outward, what's outside of you. Technology and building of society and neighborhoods. while religion was proposed as should be maintained as what is used to soothe you, while the tyrannical rulers that rule over human society exploit us with impunity. That's what science has allowed the rulers of society to do. And let me tell you how. Remember a guy named Friedrich Nietzsche? You know what? They say Nietzsche was like racist, but I like Nietzsche. And not because of his racial views, which I didn't really see much about his racial views. Maybe if we're talking about him saying stuff like the European, something about the Superman and things like that. If you look past people you disagree with and just look at the value of what they're saying, you'll find that there is some value in something that everyone says. Even the people that you disagree with or have an emotional problem with. You shouldn't discount their words because of who they are. That person can still be giving you value. And remember, as a thinking species, information, knowledge is our real currency of wealth that we should be trafficking in. In fact, that is what we traffic in. It's everything else just gives the appearance that it's other things that we traffic in. But really, knowledge is power for a member of a thinking species. In fact, it's power for an entire thinking species, which is why our societies kept dumb. Which is why our societies kept unintelligent. Reference the statistics on our educational system if you are offended by what I'm saying. All I can do is speak truth. I'm not trying to offend anyone. If you're offended by the truth, that's a personal issue. Because as members of an intelligent species, I wish to live in truth. I think that is the most intelligent thing for us to do, is to live in truth. And going back to what intelligent actions are. Now remember, the Enlightenment. What made the Enlightenment so special? Because we made everything scientific. Excuse me, I just kicked the table. We made everything scientific. We found an order of operations to do everything. Everything was a process. We made everything into a process. We dissected, reduced, and made everything cold and calculated. Now, today we try to act like science and religion are angry with each other, are fighting each other. But here is the beauty of the whole thing. You know how science loves to tell you, or at least for hot decades now, they said that their science and order of operations can only go as far as what is outside of human society, what is outside of the individual. That when it comes to human societal behavior, science wants hands off. It's beyond the scope of science. What if I tell you that no? First off, it is within the scope of science, because everything within the universe is based off of science and mathematics. All motions are. First off, that's the reason why math best explains everything that goes on in the cosmos. Second off, the reason why that is a falsehood is because religion is what science, what the Enlightenment put forth as what is to control the population. Scientifically, if you look at it, let's remember what the purpose of a government is. It is not to serve the people. I don't care even if it's in a democracy. Even in a democracy, the first mandates of the government is control and to maintain control. Sustain / maintain control. Those are the first two mandates of any government, regardless if it is a dictatorship, an outright tyranny, a democracy, or a republic. The first two mandates of that government, just no different than a monarchy, is to establish control and to maintain / sustain that control. Think about that. Think about why that would be. Or think about the veracity of that statement. Now, being that that is the case, science is funded and has always been funded by the state or people who have the greatest influence on the state, which would be the wealthy. Really, governments have always been a puppet figure for the wealthy. They've always been a proxy ruler to the real rulers, which are the wealthy. In our case, it would be the 0.01%, 1% of the world. The 85 richest people who control, like, what is it, half of 40% of the world's wealth. Yeah, these people aren't hard. Like, we keep coming up with Illuminati and all these fancy names. No, these people are right. They're hiding in plain sight. The richest people have control in a capitalistic world. Regardless of whatever economic system that a society purports on the outside of it, being that the United States is the number one country financially, in terms of military might, all of them are essentially capitalistic because we have the influence. That is the luxury when you become the number one military power in the world. You have an influence on any other country. Any country that purports that it is socialist, it is only socialist because we're allowing it to put forth that, to be able to even come to that financial system. We allow it. In the same way the laws of nature allow us to live and exist, it's the same way that we are like the laws of nature on a lower level. That's what it is when you're the military power. You are given a certain amount of control within, under the laws of nature. Now, with that said, with control and, yes, with science putting forth, being used as a control tool of the government that's always been sponsored by the state and by the rich. The desire of the rich is not the truth. The desire of the state is not truth. Remember what I told you their mandates are. It is control and to maintain control. And remember what I told you religion exists as now. Not as what it started out as. Once religion started being mixed in with cultural, how to be culturally. And let me tell you what I mean. Notice Christianity is not the dominant religion in the Middle East. You know why? Because it does not support that financial system. It wouldn't do well for that type of financial system. An Islamic and is a financial system that is mostly influenced by Islamic Islamic methodology or ideology will not function like one under Christianity. That is the reason why, if you notice, Australia, the United States, England, countries like that are the number one financial countries, irregardless of China's rise. Because China's rise is only a result of them being willing to sacrifice their population as low workers or as low wage workers, and then them turning around and reinvesting that profit. But when you look at it, and even now, if you notice, if you want to also go to that, Christianity, all of a sudden China is being a lot more welcoming to Christianity, and what do I want to call those people? Missionaries, Christian missionaries. So China is becoming a capitalist society. So how do you what are they using to speed up their capitalism? They're importing Christianity. When they were a communist nation, they were anti-Christianity. So do you see what I'm saying? Religion is actually used to support economies. So it not only controls the populations emotionally, but it also influences how they go about their economical life. You got to pay attention to these things. These things are right there for you to see. They're right around you. You're participating in them. You're an active participant in these things and don't even realize what you're engaging in, the behaviors that we're engaging in. As my one friend Dan would say, you're being subconscious. You're just functioning on a subconscious level, just automated, not even realizing that you're not even yourself. You're just a cultural representative, what you've been taught to be by inherited beliefs and biases. That's what you made yourself become, rather than to question like you were born to do, rather than to be the thinking, learning being that you were born as. We love to tell our children to stop asking so many questions. What you really need to ask yourself is that a good thing for a thinking species to tell a young child to stop asking so many questions? That's what their default is. That's what yours is. Now, wrapping up in conclusion, basically what I am saying is religion, the reason why, because Nietzsche predicted the death of Christianity. And many have laughed at him since for miscalculating the death of Christianity. But Nietzsche was correct to do so, and he was rational to do so. And let me tell you why. At the time when he was looking at it, his prediction should have been right. But what Nietzsche did not take into account for was that Christianity was not, and religion was not the result of human idiocy alone. That was just what religion had become when he noticed it, when he looked into the history of it and saw its influence upon the society that he lived in. What Nietzsche carelessly and recklessly overlooked was that Christianity not only controls the population's emotions, but it is the rubric and driving force, the motor to capitalism. It is the motor to the predatory financial system. Let's not forget, it was the Pope who ordered the War of the Crusade, and the Crusades were more about looting than any religious liberation. So science is not an antagonist to religion. If anything, science has recommended that religion remain a force within our societies because it is what drives societal behavior in the cultural pattern that you want it to, or that the ruling class desire for the population to behave in. To me, in my view, the government and the rich are like cattle ranchers, and they are breeding us, the population, as livestock. They have put themselves in competition with us rather than working together with us. Regardless of your feeling of patriotism, or whatever your feelings are to the flag, or whatever your feelings are to your national anthem, it is no excuse to be unintelligent and unintellectual when fundamentally that is what you're born to be. Open your eyes, be conscious, become aware of what is happening around you and the actions that you are participating in, because they do have an inherent consequence as well. Life does have an inherent meaning. But that's for another video. This video was just to articulate to you why science and religion share a commonality, and it is not a contentious relationship. If anything, that contentious relationship is more a figment of deliberation. Another thing about science and religion I wanted you to notice: they're both sponsored by the state. And irregardless if someone comes up with a religion that is outside of the context of Christianity, drastically, let's say it's drastically outside of the context of Christianity, if it is not based in seeking the truth of actual reality, it might as well be Christianity. It might as well be one of the other major religions, because it is inadvertently performing the same task that those other religions are. It is keeping the population confused and misinformed and misguided and unintelligent. Thank you for your time.